Welcome to my channel. My name is Meiko. In today's video, I will explain volume 2 of the manga Fullmetal Alchemist. So please have the manga ready for your viewing convenience. I put links to the video explaining volume 1 and other videos below, so please take a look at them as well. Let me start with the titles for each chapter. 第5話、錬金術師の苦悩。When I put it through the translator, I got the alchemist's anguish, but kuno is a combination of the kanji for suffer and worry, so there are probably many different ways to express it. Next, 第6話、破壊の右手。This is probably the right hand of destruction, because 破壊 is destruction and 右手 is right hand. Next, 第7話、雨の後。雨 is rain and 後 is after, so this can be translated directly as after the rain. And last, 第8話、希望の道。希望 is hope and 道 is road. So again, direct translation and the road of hope. I have nothing to add. The chapter titles in volume 2 did not have much to explain. Now let me explain what I found interesting in the manga itself. Let's start with chapter 5. First, I want to talk about an important character in this chapter, the traumatizer of everyone, a second name for Shotoka. In my previous video, in which I explained the first person of the three main characters, Ed, Al, and Winley, I mentioned that I would eventually make a video about the second names of the state alchemists, but this Shotoka's second name is particularly difficult. So aside from that future video, I will explain it in this one. In Japanese, it is 低迷の錬金術師. The word 低迷 was probably created by Arakawa sensei. This is because even if you look up 低迷, you will almost only find sites related to Fullmetal Alchemist. Starting with the easy one, the kanji that reads mei means life. The other kanji that reads tei has several meanings. Two of the most common meanings are to spell, to make poems or sentences, and to mend, to sew together. It sounds like they have completely different meanings, but what they have in common is that the first meaning means to connect words together, and the second meaning means to connect clothes together. In other words, the whole meaning of the word teimei can be to connect lives. I looked on Wikipedia to see how it is translated into English and found that it is sewing life. Well, I guess it is kind of close. The next thing I will explain is where Ed is reading a book in Tucker's reference room and the dog, Alexander, jumps on him, which makes Ed angry and he starts chasing Alexander. Ed says, "They say a lion does its best to hunt a rabbit," and says that he will do his best to deal with Alexander with all his energy. I thought this "a lion does its best to hunt a rabbit" was a simple metaphor, but it turns out that there is a saying that means a skilled person does one's best to do even simple things. I think the direct translation would be fine, but if the target language has a commonly used expression with a similar meaning, I think that expression can be used in the translation. The next scene I will explain is a painful scene, one in which Nina and Alexander's chimera appears. All of this chimera's dialogue is written in hiragana. For example, non-Japanese names outside of the kanji area like Edward are usually written in katakana, but in Chimera's dialogue, it is Eduardo in hiragana, like this. And when Nina was Nina, in her line, the ni part of the word Oni-chan, big brother, was written in kanji like this. By the way, this word Oni-chan is used in Japanese not only to refer to the actual older brother, but also to refer to young men in general. But after she was turned into a chimera, all the letters of Oni-chan were written in hiragana, and the last letter was lacking. Here's what it looked like as I try to replicate the panel where the chimera calls Ed Oni-chan after repeating his name several times. Imagine that the chimera is in the middle. Looking at it this way, I feel that the broken word and the font of the letters play a big role in creating the creepiness of the tunnel. I feel that the use of hiragana is rather for a childish and immature impression. As I said in my past video, Japanese tend to learn in the order of hiragana, katakana, and kanji. So using hiragana a lot gives the impression of being childish. This is just how I felt, but I think Nina's intelligence may have decreased a bit because she was turned into a chimera. To express that, I think all of Chimera's dialogue is written in hiragana. I will move on to next. I will talk about the military dog, which I also talked about in my video for volume 1. The phrase appeared twice in volume 1, but each time a different kind of kanji inu, dog, was used. The middle inu kanji was used in the military dog that Father Cornello used to describe Ed. And the left inu kanji was used when Kyle's father referred to Ed as the military dog. For more details, please check the video about volume 1. You can find a link to it in the description below. In this volume 2, the phrase military dog appears in a scene. I'm not sure of the exact location, but it's a scene where Colonel Mustang talks to Ed, who is depressed on some outdoor stairs. Colonel Mustang says to Ed something along the lines of, "You're the one who decided to take full advantage of the privilege, despite being called a military dog, a devil, to get back on your own body." The military dog in Kono's dialogue here is written in the middle kanji for inu. This is the more dismissive kanji. The inu in Ed's reply, "Even if I'm called a dog, a devil, Al and I will return to our original bodies," is also written in this kanji. I think this kanji is used because they both use it as an example of an insulting word. The last thing I want to pick up on for chapter 5 is Scott's dialogue where he speaks to God after giving justice to Tucker. There's nothing particularly difficult about this line, but I want to bring it up because it has sometimes come up for bad reasons among Japanese fans as an example of mistranslation. In Japanese, it is 今、二つの魂があなたのもとへ帰りました。The literal translation is, "Now two souls have returned to you." However, I'm not sure if this is the English translation of the manga, the translation of the subtitles of the anime, or the translation of the dubbed version of the anime. But I have heard that some translate the two souls part of this line as two human souls. Some may think that this is not such a big difference, but I personally think that it is a huge difference. This is because many Japanese fans think that the two souls refer to Nina and Alexander. Therefore, if human is added, Alexander the dog would not be counted. Of course, there are Japanese fans who interpret it as Nina and Tucker or military police, and as far as I know, Arakawa-sensei has not given a clear and definite interpretation of this part in words. Well, actually, I think that even if the author expressed their answer outside the works, the interpretation should be up to the readers. It is okay for readers to not think that Alexander is included when they read Two Souls because of their religious beliefs or culture, but it is a different matter when one of those interpretations is completely taken away by the translation. I would say that it reduces their experience of reading the manga. I understand that language differences inevitably lead to slightly different expressions, and I do not blame that. But in this case, I think that simply not adding human in the translation could avoid the issue. All the more reason for me to be disappointed. I'm very curious to know what you think about this, so please leave comments. Those were the explanations for chapter 5. Let me start my explanations of chapter 6 here. The first thing I will explain is the one in which Lust and Envy are talking while watching the outbreak of violence in Rio. And Envy, who had been disguised as Father Carmelo, returns to the usual young and pretty appearance. Lust laughs at Envy and says that Envy has the most nasty personality in the group. Envy, in return, is a little angry and says, "Are you trying to pick a fight with me, Last Obahan?" The way Envy calls Last Obahan is a bit rude. Obahan is a Kansai dialect word. Kansai is like the area around Osaka or Kyoto. And in standard Japanese, it would be Obasan. In Japan, the word Obasan is sometimes used for aunt, but just as Oni-chan is used to refer to a young man, Obasan is used to refer to a slightly old woman, even if she is not related by blood. The reason I said slightly is that there is also a word for older woman than Obasan in Japanese. It is Obasan. We don't have exact rules for what age to call Obasan, and there are some women who do not like to be called Obasan because the word implies that you are not young. Personally, I don't think Lust looks old enough to be called Obasan. Saying Obasan to such a person is offensive. I suppose the reason for using the Kansai dialect Obahan instead of the standard Obasan is that, with apologies to people from the Kansai region, but the Kansai dialect sometimes sounds a bit rough to people from other parts of Japan, which makes it seem more rude. I will move on to next. The scene of the conversation between Lust and Envy is flipped to the scene where Mustang, Hughes, and Armstrong are talking to each other. As I mentioned in the Volume 1 video, Manga often give kanji unusual readings, and in such cases, hiragana or katakana is used along with the kanji. I would like to introduce two cases of such unusual readings on this page. First of all, the phrase kizu no otoko, man with the scar, is read as scar, which comes from the English word scar. Unlike the case I introduced in the first video, this is actually a phrase that includes hiragana. Usually, we put hiragana or katakana alongside kanji to make it easier to read. So if you think about that, it is kind of weird to use katakana for the phrase that includes hiragana. But the way of reading in Japanese, especially in manga, is quite flexible, and cases like this are not so rare. Another case is that of these kanji for weapon, which are usually read as buki, but are read here as emono. The word emono means a person's best weapon, and it's normally written with these kanji. But actually, there is another kanji that reads emono, which is written like this. But the meaning of this emono is play, and this emono that means play is used more often. Personally, I imagine that the kanji for weapon is written together with the katakana emono because it is not so common to use the word emono for the weapon a person is best at, and it is difficult for children to understand the meaning if the normal kanji for emono is used. Do you get what I'm saying? I hope you do. The next scene I will explain jumps around a few pages. Edward is cornered by Scar and asks, "Who are you? Why are you after us?" Scar replies, "It's just that if there are creators like you, there are destroyers." The word create in Scar's dialogue is tsukuru in Japanese. There are also several kanji for this word, and each kanji has a slightly different meaning, so I will explain them. Actually, there are more kanji that can be read as tsukuru, but I will only introduce the three main ones. Let me introduce the first, tsukuru. This is the most commonly used tsukuru in everyday life, not only for relatively small material things such as accessory o tsukuru, making accessories, but also for something immaterial such as 曲を作る, making songs. On the other hand, the next 作る is used for things that have a shape and especially for large objects, such as a ship or a building. And the last 作る. This is the kanji used in Scar's dialogue. The two tsukuru mentioned earlier are used in different situations depending on whether the object is material, immaterial, or of different sizes, but they have in common the basic idea of making by having ingredients and then constructing or combining them. However, in the case of this tsukuru, it is used when creating something new out of nothing. And we often use this kanji for tsukuru when we talk about creating heaven and earth. In other words, creating the world, the universe. In fact, this tsukuru was used in chapter 5 when Scar, after killing Taka, said, "God, our great God, who created all the world." The reason I did not explain it there is because it is obvious to use this tsukuru in that context, so I did not particularly care about it. but I found it interesting that Scott used this tsukuru for alchemy here. I mean, it is Arakawa sensei that makes him use it though. Anyway, because of the kanji used here, I felt that even though Scott hates alchemy, he still sees alchemy as very close to the work of God. Or rather, of course he sees it that way, and so he cannot forgive alchemy, especially the reconstruction part of alchemy, because he thinks it intrudes on the realm of God. The meaning is different depending on the kanji, even though they are read the same way. Like emono, which I explained earlier, tsukuru is an even more subtle difference. So even as a Japanese person, I often have trouble picking the right one to use. I sometimes find Japanese words with the same pronunciation and different kanji a bit annoying, but I also think that this is one of the interesting aspects of the Japanese language. That's all for chapter 6. I will then move on to explaining chapter 7. At the beginning of the chapter, Scott says to Ed, whose ultimate has been destroyed, "I'll give you a moment to pray to God," to which Ed replies, "Unfortunately, I don't have a God I want to pray to." Usually, God, or Kami-sama in Japanese, is written like this in kanji. Sometimes, sama is written in hiragana, but in Ed's dialogue here, the sama part of kami-sama is written in katakana. In Japanese, sama is an honorific title not only for God, but also for people's names, and sometimes we add it for professions, etc. It is my personal feeling, but including these cases, I feel that writing sama in katakana makes it sound a bit cynical. Since Ed's answer itself is kind of cynical, I guess it was written in katakana to match that. By the way, the word God appeared several times in the first and second chapters of volume 1, but unless I missed something, it was all written in kanji. I will keep a close eye on the notation of kami-sama in future volumes as well. The next scene I will explain is when Kono Mustang appears and Scott, knowing that the Kono is a flame alchemist, one of the state alchemists, challenges the Kono to a fight. Scott says, if I translate as directly as possible, "How nice that a man who disobeys God's way comes to receive judgment himself. What a great day today." I'm not sure which word is used to translate yokihi, but the word yoki has a positive meaning, such as good, great, wonderful, etc. It can also be written in several kanji. I will introduce only 2 of them this time. First, this is the kanji that is commonly used. In contrast, this is the kanji used in Scott's dialogue. It is very difficult to explain how this yoki differs from the yoki on the left, but this kanji is often used to refer to a special day of celebration, such as a wedding or graduation. For example, if a character in a manga says, "Today is a great day," while eating sweets, it would be a bit exaggerated to use the right kanji to write yokihi. He means day. Of course, if eating sweets is the character's greatest joy and happiest day of his or her life, using this kanji would express that it is such a special day for him or her. But usually this kanji is used in "today is a great day," which speaks of a milestone, and celebratory day in one's life, such as a wedding. Perhaps English would use a different word that has a similar but more powerful meaning, but the interesting thing about Japanese is that the readings are exactly the same. So there's no difference when they are spoken, but there is a subtle difference in the way they are felt when they are written. Because of this, there may be more information in Japanese when you see it in writing than when you hear it in sound. This may be one of the reasons why I sometimes find manga more appealing than anime. Of course, I like anime too. I got off topic but back to the point. When we use this kanji yoki to say yokihi, it also means lucky day. In Japan, a lucky day is not a day that is lucky because something good happened to you, although in such a case it is also called a lucky day, but rather it is a day that is determined by a kind of fortune telling with a calendar that is unique to Japan, where a certain day is said to be lucky, so-so, or unlucky. Nowadays, not many Japanese people believe in it, but there are many people who choose the lucky day, for example, for their wedding. Anyway, words like lucky or fortune could be used to translate the word yuki here. The next scene I want to explain is a bit of page jump and takes place after Scar, who was fighting Major Armstrong, escapes the encirclement. Colonel Mustang apologized to Major Armstrong for having him buy so much time to surround Scar, but in the end they let Scar get away. And Armstrong says something like, "All I could do was try not to get killed." The Japanese word for get killed is yarareru. The word yarareru has several meanings, not only to get killed, but also to be harmed, to get sick, to be defeated. These meanings are quite similar, and to be charmed. However, get killed is the correct choice for the major's line here because of the kanji used. There is a kanji for yarareru, but it's often written in hiragana, so I'll read it. Here neither that kanji nor the hiragana is used, but the kanji has the meaning of kill is used like this. This kanji is not usually read as ya. It can be read as koro or satsu. It would be fine to write korosareru, which has no meaning other than get killed, but in manga, not only in FULLMETAL ALCHEMIST but also in other manga, it is quite common to use the kanji for kill and have it read as yarareru. Maybe it is cooler that way. The last scene in chapter 7 that I will explain is the one where they talk about Ishbal after their fight with Scar. In response to Mustang's claim that Scar's revenge is justified because he is a survivor of Ishbal, it says he's just pretending to be noble by wrapping his ugly vengeance in the oblato of God's agent. The word oblato that I kept as it was from the Japanese line seems to originate from the Dutch. I don't know the details of the Dutch oblato and neither how it is pronounced, but the Japanese oblato is a clear edible seed used to wrap powdered medicine when taking it. From this, in Japan, to say something in a roundabout way is sometimes expressed as to wrap in oblato, oblato に包む. Unlike its use in edge dialogue here, this phrase is often used To say something in a roundabout way when pointing something out to someone with concern for them. Scott does not refer to vengeance as God's agent to avoid offending people, so it is somewhat different. Those were my explanations for Chapter 7. Here comes the last chapter of Volume 2, Chapter 8. The first scene I will explain is when Ed and Al get on the train to go back to Reasonable. Two Japanese idioms appear in this scene, so I will introduce them. The first is fundarikettari. This idiom appears when Edward, who is tired of being treated like a child, thinks to himself, it is fundarikettari. The phrase fundarikettari means bad things keep happening. But what is a little strange about this idiom is that the literal translation of fundarikettari is step on and kick. Isn't that the side that does bad things? I had never really thought about it because it is a common phrase, but it is kind of strange that it can mean bad things keep happening. When I looked it up, it seems that the word originally referred to the side that hurts someone and then become a word to describe the side that has been badly hurt. The second is when Hughes delivers Connor Mustang's message that he would not allow Ed to die in his domain because it would be troublesome to clean up the mess. And Ed gives Hughes a message to tell the Connor. Roger that. I will never die before you do, Connor. Hughes laughs and says, They say, 憎まれっ子世にはばかる. You and Lord will live long. The literal translation of 憎まれっ子世にはばかる is that the person hated by the people would make their presence felt in the world. It means that the hated person tends to be streetwise and successful. Leaving aside whether this is actually a true or not, it is a saying that is used in Japan. I don't think it means long life, but well, I guess long life can be considered a kind of success. Since Connor Mustang and Ed are two people who talk hate-free to each other, I guess Hughes said that they will live a long time. The next scene I will explain is a little page jump, where Ed, Al, and Major Armstrong are talking with Dr. Malko. Dr. Malko shows them the Philosopher's Stone and introduces some other names for the Philosopher's Stone. In Japanese, one of them is 哲学者の石, which actually means Philosopher's Stone. It may sound a little strange, but in Japanese, 賢者の石 is often used to translate Philosopher's Stone. And the literal translation of the word 賢者 is not philosopher, but wise person or sage. This is not only the case in FULLMETAL ALCHEMIST, but also in Harry Potter, for example, where the Philosopher's Stone is translated as 賢者の石. In Japanese, 哲学者の石, the literal translation for Philosopher's Stone is given here as the other name, so I wonder if something like Sage's Stone is included as the other name in English. Please let me know in the comments how this is actually done. Moving on to the next. While waiting at the train station to go Reasonable, after being refused by Malko to show his research materials, Edward is told by Major Armstrong, you could have taken the stone by force, to which he replies, I wanted them as if my hand came out of my throat. Seriously. I tried to translate it directly, but this hand come out of throat in Japanese, 喉から手が出る is an expression used to describe wanting something so badly that you can't help it. It seems that the word originally came from the state of being terribly hungry and starving for food. I don't know, but maybe it's like being so hungry that you can't move your body and you want to reach a hand out of your throat and grab the food straight away. Nowadays, the phrase is used not only for food but for anything you want in general. I wondered if there was a similar idiom in English that uniquely expresses the state of wanting something so much, but I couldn't find it. Too bad. After the scene I just talked about, Dr. Mogu gives them the location of the research material he hid, and when he hands them the note, he says something meaningful. This does not seem particularly difficult to translate, but I think it is an important sentence in the story, so I will check it just in case. 君ならば真実の奥のさらなる真実に. First of all, there is no verb in this sentence. In Japanese, verbs are often placed later in the sentence. For example, to say, I ate an apple in Japanese, 私は I would be followed by リンゴ apple, and then 食べる eat will come. Well, we can't say 私は I 食べる eat リンゴ and apple in the same order as in English, but it is a slightly special form of the sentence that emphasizes an apple. Returning to the subject sentence, the bar at the end of the sentence is used in various ways in Japanese writing, and here it has the effect of making the sentence more meaningful by making the end of the sentence vague. The sentence ends without saying the verb that should be at the end, so in a language like English, where the verb is placed earlier, I guess it would have to complete the verb. In this case, the verbs that could be connected with the word 真実, truth, are arrive at, notice, or find. So I think it would be good to use these words to translate the sentence. The translation of the first part, considering that the verb is omitted, could be maybe you can find. I will take the remaining part, 真実の奥のさらなる真実, directly from the translator. It was the further truth behind the truth, because I have no idea how to translate the word oku. It is translated differently in English depending on the situation. For example, 部屋の奥 can be back of the room, and 心の奥 can be deep in the heart. The word oku refers to a point far away from the starting point. In the case here, a translator gave me the word behind, so I will go with that. The whole sentence would be, maybe you can find the further truth behind the truth. It is a very literal translation, and I am sure there is a more natural way to say it in English. That's all for Chapter 8. Those were the explanations of Volume 2, Chapters 5 to 8 of the manga FULLMETAL Alchemist. Please feel free to comment on feedback and questions. In particular, I would like to know your thoughts on the translation of the True Souls part that I talked about in my explanations of Chapter 5. There were a lot of explanations about kanji in this volume, so it might have been boring because it was difficult for non-Japanese users. I especially talked about the use of kanji in Japanese, which might have made some of you feel that it is complicated. But don't worry, Japanese has hiragana, So you can just write in hiragana instead of kanji. But just like the choice of words, I believe the choice of kanji also contains the author's intention, so it is interesting to pay attention to it when reading the manga. And I will continue to explain it in future volumes so that I can share that enjoyment with you. In the next video, I will explain volume 3, so again, please have your manga ready to watch. Thank you for watching so far. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!